The shocking theft of the Mona Lisa, 2 years without the world's most famous smile. On Monday, 21st August 1911, the Louvre felt unusually quiet. It was a maintenance day. The museum had recently begun closing on Mondays to allow staff to clean and repair galleries without the crush of visitors. Shortly after 7:30 in the morning, employee Louis Peruggia strolled into the Salon Carré. A painter of modest reputation, Peruggia planned to sketch the gallery's jewel La Gioconda, better known as the Mona Lisa. Instead, he found a blank space between 2 nails and a faint rectangular outline on the pale wall. He assumed the masterwork had been taken for routine photography, but an attendant shrugged. Another guard joined them, puzzled. Within minutes, the Louvre's chief of security, alarmed by frantic whispers, alerted the museum director. By 11 o'clock, the police were scouring every room, cellar, and courtyard. The Mona Lisa, Leonardo da Vinci's enigmatic portrait, was gone. Paris reeled. Crowds jammed the Rue de Rivoli demanding news. Reporters telegraphed dispatches across Europe. Someone had stolen the most celebrated painting on Earth. Within 24 hours, the headline on a vol la Gioconda, "They have stolen the Gioconda," plastered every kiosk. The theft was not merely a crime, it was an affront to French national pride. Leonardo painted the portrait between 1503 and 1506, perhaps touching it again around 1517. When he died in 1519, the picture belonged to the French king François I, who acquired it directly from the artist's executor. Over centuries, the panel traveled from Fontainebleau to Versailles, survived the revolution, and finally settled in the Louvre in 1797. By 1911, the Mona Lisa drew steady admiration, though she was not yet the world-straddling icon she would become. She hung in a modest Italian Renaissance gallery, protected only by a thin sheet of glass and watched by sleepy guards. Few imagined anyone would dare take her. The culprit was a 30-year-old Italian glazier named Vincenzo Peruggia. He had arrived in Paris in 1908, joining a small crew contracted to build protective glass cases for the Louvre's masterpieces. Small, dark-haired, and increasingly resentful of French xenophobia, Peruggia nurtured a fantasy. The painting Leonardo had created in Florence belonged to Italy, not France. Working in the museum, he discovered how lax security really was. Guards patrolled but did not scrutinize uniformed tradesmen. Doors were many, keys were poorly inventoried. Shortly after 7 on that Monday morning, Peruggia entered by the employee's door wearing his white worker's smock. He walked to the Salon Carré, lifted the 21 by 30-inch poplar panel from its 4 iron hooks, carried it down a service staircase, and entered a tiny stairwell to remove the heavy glass and frame. In the process, he accidentally jammed the door. A passing plumber, believing him merely locked in, freed the man with a screwdriver. Peruggia wrapped the painting in his smock and walked out into the dawn light, boarding a suburban train to his one-room apartment at 5 Rue de l'Hôpital Saint-Louis. The entire theft took under 15 minutes. Once the Louvre realized the picture was not in the photographer's studio, the police launched an enormous but chaotic investigation. They questioned every employee, closed the borders, and even emptied the Seine at points to search for a submerged panel. Yet clues were scant, a dusty glass case and 4 telltale nail holes. Parisian detectives first arrested the obvious unionized employees with grievances. They then eyed avant-garde artists who taunted the Academy. Suspicion settled on Bohemian poet Guillaume Apollinaire, notorious for advocating the burning of museums. Weeks earlier, Apollinaire's secretary, Géry Pierret, had drunkenly confessed to stealing small Iberian sculptures from the Louvre in 1907 and selling 2 to his friend Pablo Picasso. Police detained Apollinaire for days. Picasso, terrified, underwent interrogation. Both men wept during questioning but denied involvement in the Mona Lisa affair. The art world buzzed. Had the Cubist revolutionaries turned to grand larceny? Ultimately, lack of evidence freed them, yet their close call underscored the authorities' desperation and made great fodder for newspaper caricatures. Months passed, leads fizzled, and the Mona Lisa remained missing. The Louvre rehung 4 lonely iron hooks as a melancholy exhibit. Attendance doubled, people queued not to admire art but to stare at emptiness. The painting, meanwhile, rested under Peruggia's shabby bed inside a false-bottom trunk. By day he worked odd jobs, by night he slid the panel out, gazing at the half-smile he believed embodied Italian genius. Initially he imagined selling it to an Italian museum for glory. Fear of arrest kept him inert. Paris police eventually questioned him. Every Louvre workman was interviewed, but his alibi and anonymity saved him. In late 1913, Peruggia resolved to act. He carried the painting by train to Florence, hidden beneath a double floor of a suitcase. Using the alias Leonardo Vincenzo, he wrote to an antiques dealer, Alfredo Geri, claiming possession of the stolen masterpiece and demanding $500,000 for its return to an Italian gallery. Geri pretended interest but contacted Giovanni Poggi, director of the Uffizi Gallery, and the police. On 12 December 1913, Peruggia presented the Mona Lisa in Geri's office. Poggi identified the Louvre inventory mark on the back and asked to verify its authenticity at the Uffizi. There, officers arrested Peruggia. He did not flee. He believed Italy would hail him as a patriot. Peruggia's trial in Florence the following June became a sensation. He claimed he had acted out of nationalism, intent on repatriating a stolen treasure. Italian newspapers lauded him as Vincenzo l'Italiano. French commentators scoffed, noting the Mona Lisa had entered France legally 400 years earlier. Psychologists testified that Peruggia suffered from patriotic dementia. The jury, swayed by his apparent sincerity and warlike tensions between Italy and Austria-Hungary, sentenced him to just 1 year and 15 days, later reduced to 7 months. He served a few weeks' time already spent in jail, and walked free. During World War I, he fought for Italy, sustained injuries, and afterward returned quietly to France, dying unnoticed in 1925. Before returning to Paris, Italian authorities exhibited the Mona Lisa at the Uffizi in Rome's Borghese Gallery, and in Milan's Brera. Crowds flocked to see the prodigal masterpiece. When the panel finally traveled back to France in January 1914, it rode the overnight train in a cushioned case, escorted by detectives. At the Gare de Lyon, a cheering throng met the train. President Raymond Poincaré welcomed the painting to the Louvre, where it resumed its silent vigil, this time encased in reinforced glass and watched by multiple guards. Ironically, the theft vaulted the Mona Lisa from renowned Renaissance portrait to global icon. Newspapers worldwide splashed her image for 2 years, insinuating mystery into her smile. Reproductions multiplied. The painting became shorthand for art itself. Poets, cartoonists, and advertisers appropriated her likeness. Marcel Duchamp would later paint her with a mustache and the letters L'Ouk, a Dadaist prank unimaginable before 1911's frenzy. Security at museums changed too. The Louvre installed alarms, registered keys, and kept thorough lists of subcontractors. Other institutions adopted stricter protocols. Glass cases, once rare, became standard. The age of casual museum guardianship was over. Over time, myths accreted that Pablo Picasso masterminded the theft, that German agents stole the painting to demoralize France, that Peruggia worked for a ring of forgers who sold copies. One true subplot involves cunning art dealer Edoardo de Valfierno, who reportedly commissioned 6 high-quality copies of the Mona Lisa and planned to sell them to gullible millionaires, claiming each was the original. Whether Valfierno and Peruggia ever collaborated remains unproved. No copies surfaced, yet the yarn endures, a testament to the crime's narrative magnetism. Another overlooked figure is Yves Chaudron, an elusive French art forger said to have produced those copies. His existence is poorly documented, and some scholars suspect Valfierno's story is apocryphal. Still, the possibility of a forger thriving in the theft's shadow speaks to the era's burgeoning black market. The Mona Lisa disappeared for 28 months, but her absence carved a presence larger than Leonardo himself might have imagined. She taught museums the cost of complacency, exposed national rivalries, and illustrated how criminal acts can paradoxically elevate cultural objects. Today, bulletproof glass, motion sensors, and round-the-clock surveillance shield her from another Peruggia. Visitors queue for hours for a brief glimpse of her small panel, unaware that once she languished unguarded, until a disgruntled glazier carried her out beneath his coat. The story endures because it marries romance and farce. A patriotic Italian laborer, a puzzled Parisian police force, avant-garde artists in the dock, and an enigmatic smile hidden in a boarding house trunk. Above all, it reminds us that even the most iconic artworks are vulnerable to human error and human obsession. That vulnerability, paradoxically, helped cement La Gioconda's legendary status. She vanishes no more, but her greatest adventure, the daytime heist that dumbfounded the art world, still echoes through museum corridors, a whisper behind glass, a sly curve of lip hinting that secrets remain just out of reach.